Good morning. Welcome to Windows. Most of us at Eastern, if you've been around a while, even a few years, you start to get this notion that the world isn't quite right and that you might be able to do something about it. You get a notion that society could be improved if you could engage it in some sort of way. So you get a vision for social justice. And then there's a kind of breakdown. That's half the battle. The other half is, what do I do with this desire, this vision to change the world? And somehow there's a breakdown in translation as I go from my concern and compassion for a broken world to healing that broken world. If you feel a bit like that, then you're going to be quite happy this morning to hear from Barbara Shaman. I want to tell you a little bit about Barbara, who's our speaker this morning. She's an educator, businesswoman, and social entrepreneur. She's best known for her nonprofit organization, Champions for Caring. This was founded in 1995, and it has empowered over 10,000 young people in Philadelphia and South Africa to become engaged citizens and active leaders in public service. Building on the success of Champions for Caring, Barbara recently launched her newest venture entitled Embrace Your Legacy. Embrace Your Legacy motivates individuals to assess their core values, identify their passion and skill sets, and use these assets and aptitudes to pursue projects that advance personal growth and social change. The vision for this venture is perhaps best expressed in her recent book, Live Your Legacy Now: 10 Simple Steps to Find Your Passion and Change the World. The book is informed by Ms. Shaman's own legacy. She's the daughter of Holocaust survivors, and she writes in response, "My parents, who are both Holocaust survivors, taught me a great deal about humanity and responsibility. My mother, Carola Greenspan, is the sole survivor of a family of 65 people. My father, Henry, worked for Oskar Schindler. They taught me that the best response to violence and hatred is love and caring. And that is our responsibility and privilege, to make the world a better place. That is, to see one's legacy and then to build on that by pursuing and creating one's own legacy." Barbara will soon guide a group of interested Eastern University students as they develop their own legacy projects. She'll be meeting with these students on Thursday evening, February 21st, from 7 to 8:30 in Fowler Great Room. We're looking forward to those meetings. Meanwhile, today's presentation is the beginning of that envisioning process. So without further comment, I'll introduce to you Barbara Shaman.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sparks. Can you all hear me? It's really a pleasure to be here today. I have to tell you that when you walk into an institution, you can feel a culture. I go through lots of places, schools, businesses, corporations, and I instantly get a sense of where I am. And as I walk through your campus, and especially just walking around this building, that sense of caring, of social justice, of the importance of the individual, and how we, in fact, collectively and individually can change this world just resonates so much. It is such a tribute to this school, and it's such an honor and privilege for me to be here today because we see the world from the same lens. And I think as my story unfolds, you will see that that's where I come from. Irrespective of our race, our age, our religion, it's how we view the world and how we view our place in the world that I think that really bonds us. And as a Jewish woman standing here today, I feel like I'm with family because I understand the connections of people because they go to the heart, the brain, the heart, and then what we do about it. And this is a very elusive piece of life. We all are well-intentioned. We all would like to do something, but what is that something? And as a baby boomer, I can tell you I've spent most of my life pondering, what is my something? Why was I put on this earth? And what can I do to make this world a better place than before I got here? And I don't have delusions of grandeur. I am not this great person. I'm an ordinary person, but I have a lot of passion. And because of my own family history, which I will share with you, I believe that we do not just leave legacies on this earth, but rather we live legacies. Are you with me? When I say legacy, what does that mean? Can someone just share with me what the definition of legacy is? Yes?
Like a story.
Your story. Your standard and your story, absolutely. But you see, I don't think the script happens when you're gone. I believe today all of us are writing our legacy, right here and right now. And I'm going to diffuse a myth. I don't believe that you have to be Oprah Winfrey, Bill Clinton, Angelina Jolie, George Clooney, or any of these great luminaries to live and leave a legacy. I believe that ordinary people, wonderful, good, kind, caring people can put together the pieces of the puzzle and live a life that is so enriching, so vital, that makes you feel proud. And just as a footnote, I feel like this is my pre-speech talk to you. As I watch TV now, and as I look at what's going on with violence in this country, as I drove here this morning, I was listening to the 5-year-old child who was abducted by a 19-year-old caseworker, which was in the news, and then this horrible killing in Wilmington at the courthouse, and of course the cop in California last week, and of course what happened in Connecticut, and the list goes on and on and on, and it breaks my heart. Because you see, that's not the world I want for myself, for my children, or especially not for my most precious, which are my grandchildren. And I believe that it's not just the discussions we're hearing on television or even hearing from our governmental leaders about assault weapons and magazines and all of that. Of course, those are issues that need to be dealt with. But I think it's about teaching character. I think it's about teaching kindness. I think it's about teaching that we're responsible for each other, because until we can do that in a powerful way in our schools, in our mental health institutions, the world will not go in the right direction, unfortunately. So I'm happy to be here today, this morning, with you to talk about how can we live our character. How can we live who we are and really find our steps to change the world? Because you see, it's not what you leave. Too late. Once you're gone, you've done the work. So right now, today, can we all affirm that this is that first day of our life where we're going to look at how are we going to live it starting right now? Can you make that sort of commitment as you listen to me? Because I think when I leave today, if you've not taken that step, you might have thought I was a good speaker, have told you some interesting things, but this is really about your journey and about how you're going to make your legacy living a daily event in your own life. See, because living a legacy starts with, what are your core values? What is really important to you? What did you learn from your family of origin that you liked? And I'll be very candid. In some situations, I talk with people and they go, I learned a lot of things that I don't want to do. So how do you really look at all of those choices and say, this fits who I am. These are my values. This is what is important to me, whether it's respect and trust and caring and kindness. What resonates for you? And then really looking at, how do you lead your life on a daily basis? See, to me, reaching out to other people, even if I'm talking to that nameless person on the bus or saying to a young child, you look so pretty today, it makes me feel good. And I'm not really talking about random acts of kindness right now. I'm talking about integrating into your DNA a way of reaching out to people to show love, to show caring, and be honest about it. I'm never duplicitous. If I don't believe it, I do not say it. But if I feel it in my heart, and you reach out to someone, I said to a man in my building this morning, an elderly man, you look so good this morning. And it put the biggest smile on his face. It took so little for me to say that to this man, and his reaction was just extraordinary. Because finding your humanity helps you lead that life of purpose. If you can figure out what you're all about on a human level, that can guide your purpose and direction. And doing things that really give you impact and sustainability. You know, for a lot of years, I was a serial volunteer. I did a lot of things, a little bit over here. Oh, that sounds sort of nice. I'll go on that walk. Oh, and I'll go help bake those cookies, and I'll do that. And I was so fragmented. And when I was in college, it was like, okay, you're going to do this thing and this thing and this thing. What I've come to understand is that I would rather put more effort into something impactful that will really make a difference and keep it sustainable. So whether I'm continuing to do it or not, I might find an heir apparent, someone who could take it over. And in a few minutes, I'll share with you precisely how that's done. So I was in Atlantic City a few years ago, and this woman's walking on the beach, and she's wearing this T-shirt that says, "Flaunt Your Humanity." And my husband's with me, and all of a sudden I go, bye, I gotta go. And I'm chasing her in the sand because I loved her T-shirt. And I needed to know where she got that T-shirt. Now, the word flaunt is not a favorite word of mine. I actually don't like people who flaunt their material possessions, their clothes, their jewelry, their cars. I actually find that not pleasant. But to flaunt humanity? Can you imagine a world? I'm going to challenge this campus. Tomorrow, I want you to flaunt, no, Monday, so we can see it. I want you to flaunt your humanity. What would that look like? Think about it. Let's have, Nancy, a Flaunt Your Humanity Day on campus. I think that, it just came to me, I think that would be very cool. What do you think? Can I challenge you to that? Invite me back. Do it next Thursday when I come on campus. Thursday night, I'll be back here. Flaunt your humanity for me. I want to see what that looks like, what that feels like, how that takes on a life of its own. Because if that was our guiding thought, to flaunt who we are on a human level, our kindness, our ability to reach out and touch other people's lives, I think this world would be a different place. Do you agree with me? Think about it. So we each have our own legacy. And you know, there's a 200-year span in this. So if you think about it, my grandparents' influence on my parents, then their influence on me, my influence on my children's influence now on my grandchildren. I am so blessed that all of these people touched me, and I'm taking that legacy and continuing to pass it on. And you think about the incredible strength of that. It's not just one day of a life, but it's a few hundred years of influence of people who are saying to you, do this, not that. Be this way. Yesterday, my granddaughter, who's 9, said to me, someone said that so-and-so is crazy. I said, Becca, what do you mean crazy? She says, well, sort of silly crazy. I said, is she nice? Yes, she is nice. Is she a good person? Yes, she is a good person. Well, Becca, do you think that's the kind of person you want to be friends with? Well, Bubby, now that you put it that way, I guess. But it's like how we shape our dialogues with our children, how we teach each other what is important, what is not important. How do we value character? How do we assess other people? You know, when you meet a person, within what, 20 seconds, you sort of have a gut reaction, and within a few minutes, you sort of go, no, or yes, I'm coming closer. Because there's a vibe that comes out. It's how they carry themselves, how they present themselves. For many years, I had an executive search firm where I was recruiting on a national level doctors and senior level healthcare executives. And I can tell you, I got really good in this business. When I saw a doctor approaching me for the meeting, I got that initial vibe. We sat down, we would talk for 2 or 3 hours. I really had a good sense of that person. Their academic skills, their clinical skills, who they are as a person, their values. So you can really ferret that out by really listening well. So I want you to meet my family, because these are the core people in my life who've really taught me. I mean, I am the sum total of their value system, what they went through for good and for bad, and who I am today and why I'm standing here. The woman on the end is my mother. Her name was Carola Greenspan. She unfortunately just died in March, and that was so painful for me because she really taught me how to be a human being. She was my best friend, my advocate, my supporter, the one who said to me, I never went to college because I was in Auschwitz, a concentration camp, when I could have been in college, but you will go to college. And we talked about this a little bit earlier, about first-generation people going to college. It always amazed me that a woman who at the age of 14 had to leave her home, go into a ghetto. You know what a ghetto is. It's not like the way we think of a ghetto here in the States, but you know, the Nazis came in and they told Jews in the different communities, my mother was from Lodz, Poland, you must leave your home. And she could only take the possessions that might fit into like a pillowcase. And she went into this ghetto area. And it was very interesting. You see, I learned so much about my mother's character because sometimes you learn more about people when the going gets rough than when life is easy, right? So here's my mother, 14 years old, in this Lodz ghetto, and she sees all these orphans. And she decides that she's going to take care of the orphans in the ghetto. As she said to me, you know, I was already 13 and 14 years old. I was a big person. I had lived a lot of my life. I had friends. I had had a great life. But here were 6-month-olds and 3-month-olds and 2-year-olds, and their parents were dying or being deported to concentration camps. I had to take care of them. Certainly you understand that. And I thought, wow, 14 years old? She thought that way? So, you know, I'll tell you something interesting about my mom. She came down with Alzheimer's several years ago, and we used to start talking in code because she couldn't say sentences anymore. And you know what she used to say to me constantly? Who will take care of the children? Because you see, when you have Alzheimer's, you live in the past. And you know what I used to say? I will. And she would say, thank you, I love you so much. And this was an ongoing conversation. And, you know, it wasn't clear that it was the children in the Lodz ghetto, but it was. Because that's what she was afraid of. She'd say to me, I can't walk so well, and I don't feel so good. I can't take care of the children anymore. Who will take care of the children? Is that amazing? That now this is a woman 90 years old, so many years after the war, but that was still her pressing need. So here's my mother, this beautiful, dynamic teenager, and she loses her family. She was taken from the Lodz ghetto on the last transport out to Auschwitz, where they shaved her hair off. And as she said to me, you know, if you were tall, they gave you a short little dress. If you were short, they gave you a long dress, no underwear, these broken down clogs. And if you think it's cold in Philadelphia in the winter, try going to Poland, where Auschwitz is, in the winter. And they had to work outside. And she used to say, you know, we couldn't recognize each other because our hair was shaved off. We used to have to say, I'm Carola, here, find me. And if I knew anyone, I'd have to tell them who I was. And she went from that concentration camp to Stutthof, which was a horrific place. They used to drown people to kill them. It's amazing to me how evil people can get. Because if you've studied this history at all, you know there was a conference at Wannsee, and the theme of the conference was, how do you get your biggest bang for your buck for killing people? Meaning, if you use bullets, it's very expensive. So can we come up with a way that's cheaper and more effective? Do you know what they came up with at the Wannsee conference? Zyklon gas. So you know, you walked into the showers, and what came down? The gas. So my mother was lucky because the war was coming to an end, and she wound up at the quote-unquote model concentration camp called Theresienstadt, outside of Prague. Well, let me tell you a secret. It's not so model. There was a crematorium, an oven there. And when I visited there, and they said, this is a lesser camp, hardly. But it was made up to look good, so when the Red Cross came, it looked more acceptable, and there were plays and music. And did you ever hear of the book, I Never Saw Another Butterfly? You know, poetry by young children. It's very, very moving. But what I want to say about my mother is that she had an inner spirit and strength. I used to say to her, Mom, how did you survive in Auschwitz? It would have been so much easier to die. She said, you're right. To die would have been simple, but to keep going on was very important. I said, well, how did you do it? And you know what she answered me? Fantasy. I said, what do you mean fantasy? She says, well, I used to fantasize about my life before the war, about the Rosh Hashanah, the New Year dinner, the Passover Seder, Hanukkah with the candles, and it would give me great joy. And then I would project to the future and think, one day, if God is good to me, I will be alive, and I will have Hanukkah and Passover Seder, and I will have a family. So that will to have a better life is what propelled her to go on. My father came from Krakow, Poland. How many of you have ever seen the film Schindler's List by Steven Spielberg? So my father worked for Oskar Schindler. And my father was given safety by having this job, because every day, instead of going to Plaszów, which was the ghetto in Krakow, he went to Schindler's factory in Malia. Why was that good? He got food, he had clothing, he could work, and he was able to have a semblance of a normal life. Unfortunately, my father was not on the famous list. When I used to say to him, Dad, how did you get on the list? You know what he said? You had to have diamonds or gold or money to bribe them to get on the list. He said, we didn't have any of that. So he never was on the list. Instead, he was sent on the death march. And I'm very proud of my father. You know the way my mother took care of the children? My father carried his cousin on his back on the death march because his cousin had typhus and was very, very ill. And my cousin survived. He's now 94 years old. And every year on his birthday, he calls me and says, if it wasn't for your dad carrying me to, you know, my father could have died. They could have both fallen into the snow and just died there. But my father felt this commitment. Again, it was incredible to me that even under the worst of circumstances, my parents always thought about how can I help the other. Now, this is my grandmother, Golda. She was an amazing woman. She was an entrepreneur. At the age of 15, my grandmother went from Krakow, Poland, this is in the late 1800s, to Livorno, Italy, and she was involved in the coral business. She used to buy corals. And I'm actually wearing the ring that's being projected right now on your screen. You see, my grandmother found out that, you know, there were rumors. Bad things are happening. Hitler came into power. They're going to kill all the Jews and the gypsies and the mentally retarded and the gay people. He has this plan. He wants this master race. And my grandmother got nervous, and she took this ring and her Sabbath candlesticks, and she gave it to a worker in her factory. And she said, listen, bad things are happening to my people. Can you keep these things for me? And if I'm lucky enough to come back, I'll get them from you. And by the way, my family owns a 6-story apartment building. You and your family and your friends can move into this building and take care of it. Well, the man was ecstatic because my family was quite wealthy and lived very comfortably. They were not. So all of a sudden, he gets this incredible life. So he takes these things. My grandmother was sent to Auschwitz, and here's an amazing story. 2 stories about my grandmother. Did you ever hear of Dr. Mengele, the angel of death? He would stand at Auschwitz like this, to the right, to the left. One way was what? Death, and the other way was life. So who went to the death line? The old, the babies, the sick, the people who could not work. Contribute. So my grandmother gets sent to the left line. She's looking and sees that the younger people are going to the other line. When Mengele turns around, she does something amazing. She changes lines. She could have been shot for that. But she figured out if she was going to be on that line, it was over. Because you see, black and white didn't exist there. You had to think, what is he doing? What's going on? So my grandmother saves herself the first time. She's walking through Auschwitz and she finds these berries that are growing on the premises, picks it up, and she crushes them, and they make a rouge-like substance. Do you know what my grandmother did? Every morning at 4 a.m., they had appel. Appel meant you had to go outside, stand on line freezing, and they called you by your number. to see who lived and who had died and who was available to work. So every morning at 3 a.m., my grandmother would get up, take the berries, and start rouging the cheeks of the sickest people. Why? To make them look healthy. Can you imagine that? When she used to tell me these stories after the war, I said, weren't you scared they would kill you? She says, they were going to kill me anyway. So why couldn't I do something nice before they killed me? That's amazing to me. Now, let me tell you another thing about my grandmother. You see, part of what the Nazis wanted to do was to take away identity. Think about it. They took away people's homes, their possessions, their families, their names. They gave them numbers that they tattooed on their arms. So, how do you survive when someone is taking away your identity? You fight it. So my grandmother would say every day, they would call her number, and she would in her head say, I am not a number, I am a human being, you will not do this to me. Do you know what that's called? It's called resistance. It's like, you're going to do this to me? Oh no, I am fighting back. You are not going to make me a thing, a number. I am a human being. I am more human than you are, even though there are guns and dogs surrounding me. I will do the right thing, and I will keep rouging the cheeks of these women. Is that incredible resistance? You know, there's a discussion post the Holocaust. Why didn't the Jews resist more? Well, let me ask you a question. If you were in this auditorium and people came in with machine guns and dogs, what would you do? Would you get up and try to run? They'd shoot you. Well, that's what the scene was like. But human resistance inside of you, they can't control that. And the more they made them scared or try to take away their humanity, the more they did these acts of humanity. Do you understand that cycle? If you tell me I'm not a human being, I can either believe it or I can resist it. And I resist it by being more human than ever. Is that profound? You know, so when I think about, I live in the most extraordinary country in the world, do we not? With all of our problems and with the State of the Union message and everything that's wrong, I would never trade where I live. I am free to walk in here and tell you my passion, my vision, what my life is about. Nobody's stopping me. What a gift. They were in concentration camps, and they were able to actualize their vision for their humanity. Think about that for a moment. What you can do in the worst of times, and certainly what you can do in the best of times. Because my mother used to say to me, every night when I went to bed, there's a Jewish word I want to teach you. You might know it. It's also German. Do you know the word mensch? What does mensch mean? A man, but it has a connotation of a good man. My mother would say, I wanted to know if I was a mensch today. Even in Auschwitz, you can be a mensch. So the war comes to an end. My dad meets my mother in the convalescent section of Auschwitz. He falls madly in love with her. He takes her to Lodz, Poland, which is her hometown. And out of 65 people, everyone was killed. She had had 2 brothers, 2 sisters, parents, grandparents, all gone. They then go to Krakow, Poland, and my father finds his 50-year-old mother. Not many 50-year-olds survived, and 1 brother. And my father says to his mother, I want to marry her. And then he says, oh, I wish I could have given her a ring. She's so beautiful. I want to give her a ring. And my grandmother says, oh, the ring. I have a ring. They go to find this man. The guy sees them, and he goes, oh, they came back. He was not happy. Why was he not happy? He got used to a very lovely lifestyle. So my grandmother says, hello, I'm back, I survived. I want the ring, I want the candlesticks. Guess what he says? What ring? What candlesticks? But my grandmother was so clever. She says, you know, I only want the ring and the candlesticks. You know this apartment building? It's yours. We're not staying here. There's too much blood, our blood, in this community now. Just give me the ring and the candlesticks. And then he backed off. And this became my mother's engagement ring. For one of my special birthdays, my mother took this ring off of her finger, put it on mine, and said, I want you to wear this ring, and I want you to think about your legacy, where you came from, what you had in your life and what we taught you. And then the important thing is, what are you going to do with your life every day to be a mensch? So let me tell you something. I love this ring. It's very pretty. It is a burden and a responsibility, and yet the greatest gift. Do you understand why I say all those expressions? Because every day I look at this ring, and now that my mother's dead, I say, Mom, I'm trying to be good today. When I drove up here this morning, you know, I was listening to all this awful news, and I said, Mom, I'm going to speak to some amazing young people today, and I'm going to get our message out there. We're doing the work. And I looked at the ring. So think about it. Is there something in your own family that's very special? See, this ring is not that valuable in terms of money, but it's the most important thing I own, because my whole family is in this ring. Here are some pictures of my family in Krakow, Poland. This is their wedding. My mother's wearing a dress made out of a tablecloth. They had nothing, but look at the smiles. How beautiful. After what they've been through, they weighed 80 pounds after the war. This is me. I was born in Germany, and my mother always used to look at this picture and say, was my best picture ever, true? She used to say, wow, when you were born, we realized we really could have life again. Because until that point, they did not know. So I always put this in, not so much because I'm showing you, I'm flaunting myself, but what it meant for them to have this child. So what did they teach me? That silence and indifference are diseases. You cannot stand by when awful things happen in this world and say, this is not my problem. That you have to stand up and speak out for what you believe in. And my mother used to say it is everyone's responsibility. And listen to this word, privilege. Privilege to make the world a better place. Because she'd say, you know, I did it in Auschwitz. What's your excuse? Now, let me tell you something. Growing up, that was pretty heavy-handed to have to listen to that. But it made a point, right? So here's what I believe. My mother used to say this a lot. A head without a heart is dangerous. You can be Al-Qaeda and be very smart and bomb our World Trade Center. You have no heart. I don't care how smart you are. I don't care if you're straight A today. If your heart and your head don't connect, it's not a formula for life. Let's work on the heart. I'm an educator. I've been in the field for over 45 years, and I can tell you that until we train the whole child and the heart of the child to think and feel and act like a good person, we are not doing our kids a service. Do you agree with me? It's not just about grades. I had a friend that used to cheat on every test and get straight A's. And my father would say, what'd you get? And I say, B+. What'd she get? A. I said, but Daddy, she cheated. So let's talk about that. What is the measure of a man or a woman? My mother used to say something to me, because you see, if I leave you with no other message today, resiliency is the most important trait we can ever have. Life is hard. Have I just shared a secret? Life is beautiful. Life is hard. Did you hear me in the back row? Life is hard. I don't care who you are, how much money you have, what your background is. You will be tested in life. True? You will have illness. There will be deaths around you. There could be divorces. There could be financial ruin. I've had a lot of those things. In the last year, my husband, my father, and my mother died. Life is hard, but it's how you come out of it is what's important. So here's what my mother used to say to me. Remember, the sun came out for me after Auschwitz. It will always come out for you. Think about that. In a concentration camp where they're beating you, starving you, where you have everything taken from you, the sun will still come out. And do you know what? When I'm in my darkest hours, I say that to myself. The sun came out for my mother. It will come out. That doesn't take away the pain of what you're going through. But you need to believe this. My mother used to speak in Harlem and in the Bronx a lot. I grew up in New York City. And one day she gave her talk, and this young woman came up to her and said, you know, Mrs. Greenspan, I was going to commit suicide today because my mother's boyfriend takes an iron and he burns me, and he takes cigarette butts and burns my arm, and he's very cruel to me, and my mother doesn't believe me, and I'm so miserable. But when you said the line about the sun coming out, do you think it can come out for me? And my mother said, put her arms around her, of course. She says, okay, I'm not doing it. I am not doing it. There's such strength. Use this, because the sun is warm, it heats, it makes you feel good. Think about the sun in your life. So I went to Auschwitz. I was running a national executive search firm, which was a very non-traditional job for a woman like me. I was a baby boomer. Do you know what baby boomer women could do for a living? Who can share? 1970. What could you be? Teacher? Secretary? Nurse. Never thought I could be an entrepreneur running a national company. Thought I hit the top. Loved it. Live long enough, things change. That's the secret, everybody. Just keep living and living and living. Okay, so I go to Auschwitz with my mother, and I'm going to tell you a quick story. My mother used to brush her teeth compulsively. It drove my brother and me insane. We were always late. In Auschwitz, no, she'd always have to say, I can't go yet. I'm not ready. I have to brush my teeth. I have to brush my teeth. When my mother had Alzheimer's, the caretaker had to take her at 2 in the morning, 4 in the morning, and 6 in the morning to brush her teeth. We get to Auschwitz. We're walking through. And you know, have you been to Auschwitz? There are rooms where, have you been to the Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C.? You know the shoes? Yeah. You know how they collected the stuff? So Auschwitz, you walk in, you see thousands and thousands of eyeglasses. That they were proud of it. They show it. Then you see thousands and thousands of suitcases. You know what you see in the last room? Toothbrushes. My mother looks at me and goes, the only thing I had when I came here was my toothbrush. That was the last thing of my humanity. It's in that pile. I got so sick. I thought I was going to really lose it. I ran out of Auschwitz, ran into the courtyard, and these kids are playing. They were from Germany, a bunch of guys. One of them had a swastika carved in his hair. It's like, why are you at Auschwitz? Get that off your head. Do you know what that symbol means? It's not a joke. And they're laughing, and I speak German. I said, do you know where you are? Do you have any respect? What is wrong with you? This is a death camp. And they start laughing at me. And I had an epiphany. I thought, oh my God, I'm not going to recruit doctors for a living. I need to come back to America and work with young people and teach them these lessons that my parents taught me. My whole life changed because of a toothbrush and an encounter with some rude guys. I came back, and I was very lucky to meet Steven Spielberg. He had just made a film called Schindler's List. And I told him about my experience. You see, because you know what? In life, you have to network. Does everybody know what networking is? You got to take that Rolodex out into your brain and think, I need to do this. Who can help me? Because we can't do it alone. And be brazen. There's a great Jewish word called chutzpah. But chutzpah in a nice way, you know, not like Alan Dershowitz sometimes uses it. Like, you know, I need something. Will you help me? It's a good cause. Let me explain it. And if you believe in it, help me. I can't do it alone. So you start approaching people for that help. So I got to Spielberg, and he helped me, and I started Champions of Caring, a 503 not-for-profit to sensitize, educate, and empower young people to become leaders in service. Because I thought, if I can teach this to kids, wouldn't the world be a better place? We could start flaunting our humanity together. How cool would that be? So meet my kids. This is Raul, who now goes to Esperanza College, and I'm here today because of Esperanza College. So I love Raul. So now I want you to think about this. How do you make a difference with your life? Here's the world according to Barbara. I meet Raul. I honor Raul for being a champion. Every year, we've honored over 3,000 kids who've given 1 million hours of service. Every year we get a $50,000 scholarship from Drexel University, which is really wonderful. And one of our key students is here, Terrell McRae. One of my favorite, he's like my surrogate son. He now works at Vanguard. And when I met him in 1997, he was at Kappa, High School for Creative and Performing Arts. Well, anyway, so I say to these kids, what do you love to do? Love more than anything. Raul, without blinking, says salsa dancing. I said, Raul, that's fabulous. Raul changed the world with salsa dancing. He looks at me like I've got 4 heads on. Like, Raul, what bothers you? What really makes you angry? Well, Miss Barbara, you want me to be honest? No, Raul, don't be honest. Of course I want you to be honest. You know those old white people, not like you. You're a nice white people. I said, okay. But you know, some of these old white people, they see these Latino boys and black boys like me walking down the street. They cross the street. They don't like us. They don't even know us. Why are they so prejudiced? And then I have to be honest. We're not so nice to them either. Why aren't we nice to them? It really stinks. I want to do something. I have an idea. He goes, there's a senior center near my school. All those old white people go in there every day. I'm going to go teach those people how to do the salsa. Because if I dance with them, they're going to see I'm a cool kid and they're going to like me. I go, Raul, you really are getting these pieces together. But this is service learning. This is going to be a little bit more. I need a mission statement. I need goals. I need objectives. I need a plan. I want you to write this out like a real project, not like you're going to go in there one day, go salsa, 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 and that's the end of it. That's not how you change the world. And he looked at me and goes, I've never written anything like that. I said, I want a letter to your principal. I want a letter to the executive director. If we're really going to make this your legacy, you've got to work hard. He comes back. Ready? He recruited 20 African-American Latino boys. Forgive me, guys. Usually I don't get 20 guys saying, I'll do the project. It's usually girls. We need more guys. Tip, okay? They pick the music. They teach each other, because you know what he said, which was smart. Just because I know how to dance the salsa doesn't mean I know how to teach to dance the salsa. They teach each other how to teach it. They go into the center. They teach these 70, 80, and 90-year-olds the salsa. They have such a blast. He calls me up. He says, and then those people taught us this crazy dance called Jitterbug. We had so much fun. Then we come back and we did an oral history project. Our video teacher came and we were asking them questions. When you were growing up, was there prejudice? How did you feel? Were you ever bullied? He goes, you get what I'm doing? I want them to know they're sort of doing it to us. The next thing that they look around, they go, this center needs to be painted. They go to Lowe's, they go to Home Depot, get the paint, the brushes, they clean up the place. That year, we have a program at Drexel, and Taki Papadakis, rest his soul, who was the president of Drexel, standing next to me on a stage. Raul and an 85-year-old woman get up there in front of 500 people and dance the salsa. But what she said was so important. Before I met Raul, I had hate in my heart. Thank you, Raul, for teaching an old dog new tricks. Is this a beautiful project? And it was sustainable because he kept doing it, and then he had friends in different parts of Philadelphia, and they started similar projects. So Maddie, beautiful young girl who went to Mary and Mercy High School on the main line, said to me, you know, Barbara, I never heard the word Darfur, because we would sit at lunch and we would talk about Britney Spears and Cindy Lohan and all this stupid stuff. And one day this speaker comes in and talks about Darfur, and I thought, I got to do something about it. She says, I'm a fashionista. So she creates these t-shirt designs like this, hate is out of style, and on the back, Save Darfur. She raises $10,000 for Save Darfur Foundation. I say, Maddie, fabulous, but you need more. We need advocacy here. She goes, well, what do you mean? I said, every day at lunch, why don't you have kids come and sit with you and you write letters to the editor of the paper, to senators, to congressmen. And then she comes up with, I've got a great idea, factoids about genocide. Every time I sell a t-shirt, I give out a factoid. She created a 501c3 not-for-profit around this. She pulled in her grandparents and her parents. It became an entire family endeavor. So Maddie's love of fashion, with her anger about Darfur, created this fashionista project. Terrell, your student, my son, whom I adore, decided, you know, he was growing up, he didn't have a father figure. And now, at the age of about 28, he is matching up African-American and Latino guys with males who can be father figures to them. I love it. And you know what I love? Because what I'm saying to you today is not about, when I was a sophomore at Eastern, I did X. This is a way of life. Terrell has been doing service with me and then without me for almost 18 years now. And that's my message. This is not about something I'll do because I'm getting credit for it, or because I have to do a senior project, or because I have to do this for a class. It's about flaunting your humanity. Noreen's family was in the Khmer Rouge in the genocide in Cambodia. And she decided to create an eco-friendly computer technology lab in rural Cambodia. because her parents survived. She was able to have this happen. So I'm going to end with this. These are legacy formulas. Remember I started my talk with, so how do you do it? You know, I used to sit around and go, I want to change the world. I have no clue how I'm going to do this, but I do want to change the world. Today, I am showing you how a few wonderful young people did it. So let's look at their formula. Raul took salsa, which was his passion, and worked with seniors to break down barriers and prejudice. Maddie's Hate is Out of Style t-shirt campaign, her passion for fashion, coupled with her anger about Darfur, raised awareness and funds to combat genocide. So I end and ask you, what is your legacy formula? What do you love? Can someone yell out something they love? Music. Music, yes. Somebody else. Movies. What? Movies. Movies? Yeah. Okay. Somebody else. Children. Children. You can become Steven Spielberg. Look at what he's done with movies. My point is, if you can search in your soul to pull out your passion and then figure out an area that you want to address, you can create sustainable, impactful projects for social change. So next week, when I meet with students, we're going to look at, what are you about? What is your profile? What are your interests, your causes, your skills, your resources, and ideas? And let's change the world together. Are you going to flaunt your humanity? Oh, no, come on, energy, guys. Are you going to flaunt your humanity? Okay, thank you.
Can I just say, I think there's an interesting theological theme floating in the air. And I think it comes from this idea that some Christians have that somehow we're empty vessels and that God works through these empty vessels. Rather than, and I think what Barbara's getting at, is that God actually gives you capacities, talents, gifts, abilities that you can use or misuse. You can do wonderful, powerful things with it. You could do horrible things with it. And what Barbara is suggesting is that there's a way to strategically take the gifts and talents that God has given you and to make a difference far greater than you ever imagined. And so we're grateful to have had you with us, and we look forward to seeing what you'll do with us soon. Thank you.